You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show. The preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. There you go. As the Iron Lady always sings on the show, that makes it official. Welcome to the big show, my family and friends. We certainly appreciate you guys. For 16 years, we've been bringing the Chris Voss Show, the Pulitzer Prize winners, the brilliant authors, the White House advisors, the you name it, CEOs, billionaires, all the people in the show. The show's been going on for so long, I'm clearly losing my memory and settling into dementia. But I mean, seriously, has anything changed in 16 years? That's where we're at. We have an amazing multi-book author on the show. You may have heard of her. She's famous in so many ways, and we'll get into that. Deanna Rayburn's on the show with us today for her latest book, A Grave Robbery. It's part of her Veronica Speedwell mystery series, book 9 of 9 actually, that's come out, and we're going to be talking to her about what's inside this latest one that everyone's going to be hot off the presses for. It comes out March 12th 2024, and we're going to get into it with her. She is a New York Times and USA Today best-selling novelist. She is a sixth-generation native Texan. She graduated with double major in English and history from the University of Texas at San Antonio. She married her college sweetheart and is the mother of one, and makes her home in Virginia. What? She left Texas? She was a sixth-generation Texas? She's like, screw this place, I'm out of here. I'm going to Virginia. Oh, wow. I don't know. We'll have to check with the authorities on that one. Her novels have been nominated for many awards, including the Edgar, 2 RT Reviewers' Choice Awards, and the Agatha, 2 Dilly wins. Do I have that pronounced right? Dilly wins? Dillis wins. Well, they misspelled that. It's Dillys.
Those Brits for you.
That or I'm very dyslexic. Yeah. Well, that's why we left them behind and just formed our own country. And last laugh, she launched a new Victorian mystery series with the 2015 release of A Curious Beginning, featuring intrepid butterfly hunter and amateur sleuth Veronica Speedwell. Welcome to the show, Deanna. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
There you go. What made you abandon Texas after all those years? What the hell? Who hurt you?
It's hot, man. It's hot.
That's true. It is. So give us your .coms. Where do you want to have people find you on the interwebs?
It's so easy. It's DeannaRaybourn.com.
There you go. DeannaRaybourn.com. Hates Texas. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I love Texas. I get to go back usually about once a year to sign books, most often in Houston at Murder by the Book. We love them there. So I get my tacos, I get my barbecue, and then I head back home. So it's all good.
Barbecue. That's the only reason I don't live in Texas, is because every time I go to Austin, man, I eat so much barbecue. It's like so sweating out of my veins for like 2 weeks after.
Yeah, and if you've ever hit up a place called Good Company in Houston, man, you know you've eaten.
There you go. And I would weigh like 400 pounds. I would eat barbecue to my deathbed, and people would be like, how did Chris die? He ate too much barbecue. People be like, is that possible? And he made it possible. So welcome to the show. Give us a 30,000 overview of your new book, A Grave Robbery.
A Grave Robbery. Yeah, like you said, this is book 9 in the Veronica Speedwell series. And the question I get asked most often, so I'm going to head this one right off, is this the last book in the series? And no, it is not. So we've got more to come, which is going to be great fun. But it is following the adventures of my Victorian lepidopterist, which is just a fancy word for butterfly hunter.
Oh, wow.
And she goes around, falling over dead bodies, as you do. And she's got a really hunky sidekick. And a lot of people want me to take his shirt off in every book. And I usually do. And in this one, I take his pants off, too. So like, everyone should be happy.
Whoa. Well, it's not that kind of show. Calm down, Dan. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, that's why we don't have a lot of romance novelists on the show, because I always have to say to them, they got naked on the beach again in the book. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, you've written a lot of books. How many books do you have under your belt here?
I sat and added it up, and I think this is my 20th.
There you go.
I think
Congratulations.
it's my 20th. Yeah.
Pretty prolific. So is the Veronica Speedwell, is that just kind of going on its own now? Have you left the others behind, or do you have different lanes that you're flipping around and running?
Oh, well, in 2022, I published my first contemporary thriller, which was called Killers of a Certain Age, and it has done phenomenally well. And I just turned in the sequel to that last week to my editor. So that'll be coming out in March of 25, I think, and that's called Kills Well with Others.
There you go.
Yeah, so it's about my 4 60-year-old female assassins who have to band together when the organization they work for tries to kill them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Never good when that happens. So, on lots of murdering. What's up with you? Who did
So
it?
much murder. So much murder.
And they're all 60. I mean, maybe that menopause should get looked at by a doctor.
I've told people, man, stay out of our way, because we have a lot of rage, and our give a shitters are broken, and the only reason I'm not in jail is because I don't look good in orange.
There you go. That's my motto too. I have that tattooed to me somewhere. But yeah, that those hot flashes can get out of hand, especially if you're near a knife. So evidently that's an issue. So the book opens, and I think most of these this series, the Veronica Speedwell mystery series, they're set in a certain time period, aren't they? Is that correct?
Yeah, they're all set late 1880s. So far, we're 9 books in, and I don't think we've covered more than 2.5 years.
Oh wow!
So
it's a lot of murdering.
They're falling over dead bodies like every 3 or 4 months.
That's Fridays around here,
right? But yeah, we're kind of at the sort of at the tail end of Queen Victoria's reign. So there's all sorts of interesting technology, which was new for Victorians and super exciting. Starting off Victoria's reign, everybody is riding horses. That's as fast as you can get someplace, and they're lighting their homes with candlelight. And by the time she dies in 1901, automobiles have been invented, and there's electricity. And in between, you've got gas lights and steam power. And so gas lights and steam power are what my folks have. But, the first telephones had already been installed in London by the time my characters are romping around. Now, they don't have access to them because, those were the, kind of the purview of the really wealthy. And it makes you wonder, like, what did the first person who had a telephone installed, like, who did they call?
Yeah, that's true, huh?
Who did they call? Yeah.
I don't know. I think Alexander Graham Bell called his assistant in the next room. I think, wasn't that how that worked?
Yeah, but how did it catch on after that?
Like, who do you call? And you're like, hey, we should call that other person with a phone. Hey, what's the number? Well, our number is 1, so they must be 2.
Number 2. Yeah, exactly. No, and it's fantastic because if you go in and you read the minutes for the Houses of Parliament at that time, you can see them debating, should these people be allowed to have a phone? Should those people be allowed to have a phone?
Well,
and it's really fascinating to see how Victorians adopted technology because, the Victorians, apart from us, experienced the greatest technological change over a century. We're the only other folks who've lived through more of that. And so it's really interesting to see how they dealt with it, because sometimes they just flipped out and they didn't cope well. The first people to try and set foot on an escalator about lost their damn minds, because it's like, what? The stairs are moving. That's not okay.
That's a funny story. I had when we were young, my family adopted they didn't really adopt, but they brought him in for a summer, Indian boy from the Indian things, and it was the things Mormons were doing back then, and they'd move him in, and I don't know, I don't know what they were trying to. Let's leave it off to the side. So anyway, he come from the reservation. This young man, he was like 10 or 11, and he had never ridden on an elevator before. And I remember I walked into an elevator with him downtown, and we were going to go up a few floors, and he was terrified. He's like, "Where are we going? Why are we going to this room?" And I was like, "It's an elevator. You ever been on it?" "I've never been on it." And I remember when it started moving up, he grabbed me and crumpled to his knees. He's freaking out. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing when you first adapt to technology.
Yeah, technology can be terrifying if you're not accustomed to it,
That's true.
and Victorians had a really hard time adapting. Some of them, some people, were early adapters and jumped on board, just like some of us did with cell phones in the 1990s. And I remember carrying around my brick, and then other folks, it took them a little longer to warm up.
Oh yeah, the murderous brick. You could murder somebody with that thing.
You really could.
It weighed like 20 pounds. You're like, well, at least I can make calls and defend myself from robbery.
Exactly.
Yeah, I imagine. I never really thought about that. What it was like getting the first phones, and you're like, yeah, I heard somebody else got a phone. Well, we're number one, and we always call number two, so their phone number must be number three. So it must have been pretty easy back in those days. And then they probably there's always salacious sex that leads any technology. So number 4 was probably, I don't know, the gal in the corner of the town. You could call her up. It was like an early 900 OnlyFans line.
Wouldn't have surprised me.
There you go. OnlyFans, the best callback jokes. So the phone, the book opens, and do I have this name of this character correct? Stoker.
Yeah,
okay,
he is actually the Honorable Revelstoke Templeton Vane. Honorable just means he's the son of a nobleman. His father was a viscount, and he is very much the ostracized child in his family who he basically runs away from home by the time he's 12 years old and gets up to all sorts of mischief and hijinks and whatnot. And so he goes by Stoker because Revelstoke is a mouthful. Why would you want to?
Yeah, that's probably why he's the black sheep of the family. I don't know what that means. So the book opens in London on October 1889, and the first line of the book is, "I draw the line at monkeys," Stoker said with considerable severity. "I will have no monkeys." Veronica, hopefully I did that the way you thought of it. But so it sounds like you go right for the monkeys business right off the start. Is that?
I love for my first lines to try to hook people in and be unexpected and make, I want a reader to open the book and say, what's going on here?
What's going on with the monkeys?
What's up with the monkeys?
And
and usually anybody who's read any of the previous books knows Stoker is usually trying to lay down the law to Veronica, and he's usually completely unsuccessful.
Yeah.
And so in this case, he's trying to put his foot down about the monkeys, and he can't. There are monkeys.
Yep, that's Fridays around here too, so I feel that. It's always the monkeys. Lots of monkeys. Sometimes over the weekend they get into the technology and the computer. So so you lead this off. What do you feel is going on right now in the 9th book of this? Is there anything that's different? Anything that you've improved upon, or maybe you've taken some different course, or are people going to pretty much find what they've come to expect from you?
Well, the books are they're all loosely related in that you have these two main characters, and you've got some supporting characters who are the same, who come in and out. Not everybody is in every book except for the two main characters.
Okay.
And there's always a mystery to solve, but then the relationships kind of go throughout the entire series. So we've got some recurring characters who people love who pop up again in this book, and then we've got some recurring characters people love who are not in this book, and I'm gonna get letters. I can't put everybody in every book. It's too much. Yeah. But it's no, I had so much fun writing this one because I kind of let the creepy factor off the chain a little bit with this one. And so it's a little bit creepier than the other books. There's, the whole premise of this is that at the very beginning of the book, Stoker is asked, he's a natural historian like Veronica is, and he specializes in taxidermy. And he is asked to turn a wax figurine of a woman into an automaton to put in a mechanism in her chest to make it look like she's breathing, which is what they had at the time. They still have it, actually.
Really,
at Madame Tussauds. No, at Madame Tussauds in well, he's doing this for a child, so I hope not.
Oh, okay. Well, that better not. Yeah.
Yeah. So Madame Tussauds has a model of an extraordinarily beautiful young woman in 18th century clothing, but there's a clockwork mechanism in her chest, and it looks like she's just sleeping. And they call her the Sleeping Beauty. And when Stoker goes to kind of open up a panel in the chest to put this clockwork mechanism in, he finds that it's not a wax model after all, it's a corpse. So
wow.
So
It
who's
wasn't
dead?
me.
Why is she dead? Where'd she come from?
Yep.
And that's what they've got to figure out. So
why,
it's
where,
creepy,
when.
right? Like, I
Yeah,
feel like
yeah.
that's creepy.
A grave. I mean, the book is titled "The Grave Robbery." I mean, there's some some dark things that might be happening there, and you have to find out.
Exactly. And I actually got to title this one. I almost never get to title them. So this one, they kept the working title. I'm actually really pleased about that.
Awesome sauce. I know that sometimes there's that battle with the publishers. I've got a question for you from the audience and one of your readers that loves your work, and I'll get to that here in a second, Rossano. But first, tell us how you became a writer. Before I set up this question, what was the journey how did you know you were a writer at a young age, or whenever it kicked in for you, and how did you become a writer and get down this road?
I remember being super excited when I learned how to print, because I could get stories out of my head and get them on paper.
Wow.
So like, that's how long I've been. I was probably 5 when I learned how to print.
Wow.
And I had been making up stories all along. So yeah, I always knew I was a storyteller. And then I double majored in English and history because I knew I wanted to write historical fiction. And I got a teaching certificate at the same time because I wanted to eat while I was trying to get published.
Good idea.
Right? A girl likes her food.
Yeah.
And then it took me, after I graduated from college, I taught for 3 years, and I was really bad at it. And then it took me 14 years to get published.
Wow.
Yeah. I wrote my first novel when I was 23, but
Wow.
it took me 14 years to get published. And I've been in print ever since then. When I sold my first book, that was on a 3-book contract. And within 6 months, they had given me another 3-book contract. So I went from being a person who could not get slapped in the face, walking down the street in front of a publishing company, to having 6 books under contract.
And lots of face slapping. Now, so during those 14 years hiatus where you're trying to, make that first one work, were you constantly rewriting, or were you constantly trying to market your book, or were you writing different things, trying to figure out if there was something that would bite with publishers?
Yeah, I wrote about 7 or 8 books during that time. And, the first one that I wrote when I was 23, I sent in to a publisher in New York, and the editor, of course, didn't buy it. But when he rejected it, he was really, really nice. And the last line of the rejection was, "But I think your writing is absolutely wonderful." Wow. And I went, okay, that means I can do this. I can do this. I just have to figure out exactly how. And like I said, over the next 14 years, I wrote a number of things, probably 7 or 8 books that are complete crap. But I mean, they were essentially my MFA. I learned what not to do during the course of writing those books. And I was able to get an agent, and she had tried for a couple of years to place me and couldn't get any books sold. And finally she said, "I just need you to stop writing for a year. I don't want you to write for a year." And I was like, oh, okay. I figured this was her way of firing me. But I said, what am I supposed to do with this year? And she said, "Just read." And she said, "You don't know who you are as a writer. And the only way to figure that out is to know who you are as a reader." And she said, "At the end of a year, you'll know what to do." And I thought, okay, I am never going to talk to this woman again. She just fired me, but didn't say it, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the year, I looked around at all the books that I read, and I only read stuff that I really, really loved. And at the end of the year, I looked around and I went, they all have a mystery structure. They all have a slight romantic element to them. They all have a historical setting. They all have a really kick-ass woman in them. And I realized I had a blueprint for what I needed to write. And so then I sat down and I wrote a book, and it took me 2 years. And I sent it off to my agent, and I said, okay, I know it's been 3 years and we haven't talked, but here you go. And a week later, she called me and said, "This is it. This is the one I'm going to be able to sell." And that ended up being Silent in the Grave. And that was my first published novel.
Yeah, and to go off in the wilderness and do the journey. So this is
when
I was
Night of the Soul.
There you go. So I was we've all done some of those journeys.
Right.
Some of us after just drinking hard on a Friday night. So Rossano Stewart asked the question. Deanna, congratulations on your latest title. Question: would you please give a first-time novelist some helpful tips on getting off the ground and more sales? We may have done some of that.
I think the most important thing is to start writing book 2. Because if you get too fixated on what the first book is doing, you can really lose your momentum and lose your focus. And the best thing you can do, whether you're publishing yourself or whether, like, I've only ever published traditionally. I've only ever worked with a publisher. So I really can't speak to anybody who's doing the self-pub journey. I'm not qualified to talk about that. But if you're publishing with a traditional publisher, you want to show them that you can keep the momentum going, that you have what it takes, that you're not a one-trick pony, just, kind of producing this one book and then being done. Because publishers, they like to know that they can depend on you and they can keep going back to the well. They want to know that you've got more of what they came to you for in the first place.
Yeah, they can enslave you with those multi-book
And it's
deals.
absolutely. A multi-book deal is amazing. But it is, it's so easy to get caught up in the numbers and to get stressed out by the numbers and to feel like just because you can quantify sales, that somehow you quantify your worth as a writer. But you have to remember too, it's absolutely a business. Yes, we're in the business of selling books. Yes, we need to do that. But also the most important part is you're an artist. And that's the part that you can't let go of. That's the part you can't quantify. That's the part that is the most important, because if you're not in touch with your creativity, if you're not feeding that and expressing that, then all of it dries up and goes away anyway.
Yeah. There you go. An artist, the one thing that's artistic about your books is the covers really
gorgeous.
They really kind of fit the whole 1880, theme. There's a lot going on there too. I've been looking at one now for half an hour.
Yes, and I can take zero credit for them. They're put together by the art department at Berkeley Publishing, and those
a great job.
They are so stupidly talented, and they give me the most gorgeous covers.
Yeah.
And what will happen is about 9 or 10 months before the book comes out, sometimes up to a year, they'll ask my editor to come to me and say, are there any particular elements that could be fun to put in the cover? Is there, give us some ideas of things to look for. And are there any particular colors you're interested in? And most of the time they'll include 1 or 2 of the elements I suggest. Occasionally I'll even get a color that I've asked for, which is really exciting. But these are their brain children. They are so talented, and the covers are gorgeous.
Yeah, they're really cool. And they really evoke the era of the time.
They do, but they also show off the fact that these are mysteries, but also that there's some whimsy in them. Like, you look at those covers and you go, these are not books that take themselves so seriously that I'm going to have trouble getting into it, or that it's going to be dry. Because that's the fear with historical fiction.
It's not the darkness of the cover of the first Black Sabbath album. It's kind of fun but it has that whole mystery and stuff. I love the covers. So I learned something new on the show with all the great guests we have on, like yourself. I never knew what a lepidopterist is.
And see, now you can whip that out at parties.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a joke for that. But it's a fancy word for butterfly enthusiast. Why did you choose to make your character, that? What was it that struck you about that? I think it's kind of interesting choice.
Well, when I went to college ages and ages ago and got my degree in history, the history that we studied, we didn't study material and social history. We studied, basically what were Western European white men doing. And they did a lot of war. They basically did war. And when they weren't doing war, they were doing trades. And so it was a lot of war and a lot of economy. And it was just so boring. But then by the time I got out of college, I was like, okay, other people were doing stuff. I know they were. I wanted to go see what women were up to. And so I started reading on my own a lot about what Victorian women were getting up to. There was this little niche in history of Victorian female explorers that I was fascinated by. And so I started reading up on a lot of them. And one of them was named Margaret Fountain. And the great thing about these Victorian women is they left a ton of written material behind. They kept journals, they wrote letters home, they wrote lectures and articles and all kinds of stuff. Some of them even took photographs. They did a lot of sketches and paintings. And so we have massive records of what they were getting up to. And Margaret Fountain was a lepidopterist who traveled the world, made a living capturing butterflies and sending specimens home. Because after, with the whole rage about everything Darwin was coming up with, natural science was hugely popular. Everybody was collecting ferns or shells or all kinds of stuff like that, botanical specimens. And butterflies happened to be one of the things folks collected. And so you could make a really good living traveling the world, netting a few butterflies and sending them back to England to sell. And Margaret Fountain did that. And so she kept these fantastic journals. And the great thing about her journals is not only did she talk about butterflying, she also talked about all the men she slept with, which is not what you expect from a Victorian woman who's traveling the world by herself. And I thought they were so interesting. And I thought she was so unexpected that I said, you know what, if I ever have the chance to write another Victorian mystery series, because I already did one, as an homage to Margaret, my main character was going to be a butterfly hunter.
There you go.
Kind of as a thank you to Margaret for telling her wild and saucy tales.
Her wild and saucy tales, a butterfly hunter. Maybe the butterfly was a metaphor. No, I'm just going to leave that joke alone. So I think it's really cool you made that choice, and fun, and great for the character. I
mean, plus butterflies, who doesn't love them? I mean, they're gorgeous and they're cool. Interesting, and some of them eat meat. So you have a chance. Yes, there are carnivorous butterflies. But see, that's the fun stuff to throw into a book, because then readers go, seriously? And then they go off and they learn stuff about butterflies.
Yeah, I learn stuff every day. I always thought that would be fun to go hang out with butterflies. You ever seen like those? I'm sure you have the areas where there's like a billion of them, like they're on. And there are those really beautiful ones.
A lot of major cities have got a vivarium. There are loads of them, and anytime I'm in a city that has one, I make a point of going. And they are fantastic. They're usually really humid, like they'll wreck your hair, but they're glorious to go in there and just kind of sit and just wait for the butterflies to come up and hang out on you.
Really neat. Maybe you can get one to dispose of a body. You ever tried that in a book?
No, you'd have to go with pigs, man.
That's the way to go. Always pigs.
Always pigs.
We won't discuss how we both know that. You can eat through bone. Anyway, it's always good. Because if you bury them in your backyard, your enemies, then you'll always get caught. That's what I found. So,
and if you are going to bury them in your backyard, you need to put an endangered plant on top of them, because then people can't get authorization to dig them up very easily.
And then get the meat-eating butterflies. So if anybody tries to get near that whole area, there you go. Meat-eating butterflies. They're going to Google this after the show. Any final thoughts about, as we go out, any tease outs? I think you're working on the next book, so 10 of 10 in the series. Is that correct? Yeah,
like I said, I just turned in Kills Well with Others, which is a contemporary thriller that will be out in 25. And then after that, I got to buckle down and write Veronica 10.
Yeah. Did your husband ever get worried about all this murdering that's going on in your head?
No, he's very secure.
Okay. I'd be keeping one eye open.
He is very secure, and he is very beloved, so he is quite safe.
There you go. Well, as long as he stays on your good side, so he probably has lots of motivation.
Absolutely.
And, there you go. So thank you very much for coming on. We've really had fun with you come on, Deanna. And please come back for your future books. Give us any .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs?
You can find me at DeannaRaybourn.com. I do a monthly newsletter, and I'm active on Instagram.
There you go. Grave Robbery, a Veronica Speedwell mystery, comes out March 12th, 2024. Folks, pick it up wherever fine books are sold, and all of our other books as well. I love the covers, just really cool covers. So thanks so much for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com, /Chris Voss, linkedin.com, /Chris Voss, all those crazy places on the internet. Thanks to our audience for the questions. Be good to each other. Stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time. How about that?